Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Today we're reading from Bhagavad-Gita as it is, chapter number 13, Nature, the Enjoyer and Consciousness, text number 1 and 2. So just to make it a little simple, we can recite together text 1 and then I'll just read text 2. Arjuna Vacha Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Kshetram Kshetragyam Evacha Etad Veditam Ichami Jnanam Gyayam Chakeshava. Arjuna Vacha Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Kshetram Kshetragyam Evacha Etad Veditam Ichami Jnanam Gyayam Chakeshava. Arjuna Vacha Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Kshetram Kshetragyam Evacha Etad Veditam Ichami Jnanam Gyayam Chakeshava. Arjuna Vacha Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Kshetram Kshetragyam Evacha Etad Veditam Ichami Jnanam Gyayam Chakeshava. Arjuna Vacha Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Kshetram Kshetragyam Evacha Etad Veditam Ichami Jnanam Gyayam Chakeshava. Arjuna Vacha Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Kshetram Kshetragyam Evacha Etad Veditam Ichami Jnanam Gyayam Chakeshava. Arjuna Vacha Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Kshetram Kshetragyam Evacha Etad Veditam Ichami Jnanam Gyayam Chakeshava. Arjuna Vacha Prakritim, nature, Purusham, the enjoyer, Cha, also, Eva, certainly, Kshetram, the field, Kshetragyam, the knower of the field, Eva, certainly, Cha, also, Etat, all this, Veditam, to understand, Ichami, I wish, Jnanam, knowledge, Gyayam, the object of knowledge, Cha, also, Keshava, O Krishna, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Idam Sariram Kaunteya Kshetram Icha Vidiyate Etadyo Vetitam Prahu Kshetragya Iti Tad Vidaha. So word for word. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Idam, this, Sariram, body, Kaunteya, O son of Kunti, Kshetram, the field, Iti, thus, Abhidiyate, is called, Etat, this, Yaha, one who, Veti, knows, Tam, he, Prahu, is called, Kshetragya, the knower of the field, Iti, thus, Tadvidah, by those who know this. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Arjuna said, O my dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, and the field and the knower of the field, and of knowledge and of the object of knowledge. The Personality of Godhead said, This body, O son of Kunti, is called the field, and one who knows this body is called the knower of the field. Please repeat. Arjuna said, My dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, and the field, and the knower of the field, and of knowledge, and of the object of knowledge. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, This body, O son of Kunti, is called the field, and one who knows this body is called the knower of the field. Purport. Arjuna was inquisitive about Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, Kshetra, the field, Kshetragya, its owner, and knowledge and the object of knowledge. When he inquired about all these, Krishna said that this body is called the field, and one who knows this body is called the knower of the field. This body is the field of activity for the conditioned soul. The conditioned soul is entrapped in material existence and attempts to lord it over material nature. And so, according to his capacity to dominate material nature, he gets a field of activity. That field of activity is the body. And what is the body? The body is made of senses. The conditioned soul wants to enjoy sense gratification. And according to his capacity to enjoy sense gratification, he is offered a body or field of activity. Therefore, the body is called Kshetra, or the field of activity for the conditioned soul. Now, the person who should not identify himself with the body is called Kshetragya, the knower of the field. It is not very difficult to understand the difference between the field and its knower, the body and the knower of the body. Any person can consider that from childhood to old age he undergoes so many changes of body, and yet is still one person remaining. Thus there is a difference between the knower of the field of activities and the actual field of activities. A conditioned soul can thus understand that he is different from the body. It is described in the beginning, Dahino Asmin, that the living entity is within the body, and the body is changing from childhood to boyhood, and from boyhood to youth, and from youth to old age. And the person who owns the body knows that the body is changing. The owner is distinctly Kshetragya. Sometimes we think, I am happy, I am man, I am woman, I am dog, I am a cat. These are bodily designations of the knower. But the knower is different from the body. Although we may use articles, our clothes, etc., We know that we are different from these things used. Similarly, we can also understand by a little contemplation that we are different from the body. I or you or anyone else who owns the body is called kshetragya, the knower of the field of activities, and the body is called kshetra, the field of activities itself. In the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad-Gita, the knower of the body, the living entity, and the position by which he can understand the Supreme Lord are described. In the middle 6 chapters of the Bhagavad-Gita, the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the relationship between the individual soul and the supersoul in regard to devotional service are described. The superior position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the subordinate position of the individual soul are definitely defined in these chapters. The living entities are subordinate under all circumstances, but in their forgetfulness they are suffering. When enlightened by pious activities, they approach the Supreme Lord in different capacities. As the distressed, those in want of money, the inquisitive, and those in search of knowledge. That is also described. Now, starting with the 13th chapter, how the living entity comes into contact with material nature, and how he is delivered by the Supreme Lord through the different methods of fruitive activities, cultivation of knowledge, and the discharge of devotional service are explained. Although the living entity is completely different from the material body, he somehow becomes related. That is also explained. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Malitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayham Dadati Svapadantikam Vandayaham Shri Guruho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guruna Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrijatam Sahagana Regunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parichana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri ISKCON Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagitpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti-Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Arjuna Vacha Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Kshetram Kshetragyam Evacha Etad Veditam Ichami Jnanam Gyayam Chakeshava Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Idam Sariram Kontaya Kshetram Ityabhidiyate Etad Yo Veditam Prahu Kshetragya Iti Tad Vidaha. So today we're starting a new chapter. But more than that, we're starting, according to the Acharyas, a new section of the Bhagavad-Gita. Prabhupada explained also in his purport briefly that the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad-Gita are about karma. They describe the living entity and the process by which he can come to bhakti. The second 6 chapters are about bhakti itself. The Acharyas describe it's like the jewel within the case. and it's covered by the top and bottom covers, the first and last chapters. And this last section of the Bhagavad-Gita is about knowledge and how knowledge can bring us to devotional service. So this knowledge is not mental speculation. This knowledge is knowledge that will help us to realize our position in relation to Krishna and our process by which we can become purified and attain to our constitutional position of loving devotional service. So, according to Burijan Prabhu, the link between the 12th chapter and the 13th chapter we're just starting, because we've just been talking about the pure devotee who's very dear to Krishna. All of a sudden Arjuna now asks questions about things that we are not quite sure how they fit in. So Burijan has done a complete analysis on a lot on linking between different verses. And Prabhupada speaks in his purports individually on each verse very much. And Burijan has tried to show the link between how they go fit all together. So he says the link between chapter 12 and chapter 13 comes in the 7th verse of the 12th chapter. So 6 and 7 are a double verse. Yaitu sarvani karmani mayi sanyasyamat paraha ananyainaiva yogena mam dhyayanta upasate teshamaham samudarta mrityu samsara sagarat bhavami cha nachirat parata maya veshita chetasam. So the translation: but those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Pritha, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. So Burijan is saying that now in the beginning of the 13th chapter, we answer the question of how the devotee becomes delivered from birth and death. So Prabhupada in the purport to verse 6 and 7 in the 12th chapter, he says the Supreme Lord herein promises that without delay he will deliver a pure devotee thus engaged from the ocean of material existence. Those who are advanced in yoga practice willfully transfer the soul by yoga process and others take opportunities in various ways. But as far as the devotee is concerned, it is clearly stated here that the Lord himself takes him. The devotee does not need to become experienced in order to transfer himself to the spiritual sky. So this knowledge beginning in the 13th chapter is how we can very swiftly come to the point of devotional service. So we learned in the 2nd chapter, as Prabhupada mentions in the purport, that we're not the body. Dehino spin yata dehe komaram evaram jara tatha dehantara praptya diras tatra namuyati. That the body transforms, it changes from child to boyhood, from boyhood to youth, from youth to old age. But a sober person is not bewildered by that change. So someone also transfers at the time of death, they transfer into a new body. So this is showing us that we're not the body. But now principally in this 13th chapter, we learn how it is that we've come to be connected to the body, even though we're actually not the body. And actually as a spiritual entity, we're not really touched by the body at all. But we've taken on this identity. So by learning this knowledge in the 13th chapter and continuing on, then we can fully understand how to apply the fact that we're not this knowledge, this body. So Srila Prabhupada found this a significant point to try and teach us. I was looking through his classes, and on these two verses we're speaking on today, he gave 6 or 7 or maybe more classes. I found some on Veda-based, and I found different ones in his recorded lectures. So there was about 6 or 7 in total. I listened to about 4 of them. So he was trying very much to bring us into an understanding of these terms and how they relate to us. So I took a few notes, and we'll try and go through these notes and then just touch the purport again as well. So Krishna immediately talks about Kshetra and Kshetragya, the field and the knower of the field. So the field is our body, and the knower of the field is the soul who is trying to enjoy the body. So this links us back to 2 other terms that Arjuna also asked about. He asked about Prakriti and Purusha. So the body is Prakriti, and the living entity is called Purusha, the enjoyer, but actually he's a false enjoyer. He doesn't really enjoy. But so sometimes we call Purusha man and Prakriti female. But Prabhupada very clearly explains in all the lectures that he's given here is that Purusha actually applies to all of us, because we're all trying to enjoy. Purusha is the enjoyer and Prakriti is the object of enjoyment. So the original Purusha is Krishna, and everything else is his Prakriti. So he exhibits his Prakriti in order to engage in Leela, in order to have enjoyment. But that is not selfish, like when we try to do something for enjoyment. We try to use somebody else for our enjoyment. This is how the material world works. We say we're in love with someone, it very often means that we think someone will gratify our senses. So we think when we want to enjoy somebody, we exploit them. But Krishna is not like that. Everything here, including the living entities and the material nature, are his energies, which are produced by him, for him to enjoy. But when we participate in his enjoyment, then we also enjoy beyond any experience that is possible. So Prabhupada is making a very strong point about the fact that we cannot enjoy, because we're very much illusioned to think that we can enjoy, to try and enjoy, to think that if we just do something we will be happy. But Prabhupada says even if you think you're happy at a certain time, it's going to end. He also equates the enjoyer, the Purusha, with the controller, because generally the controller is the one who is in a position to enjoy. He says, so many people in history have tried to be the enjoyer, have tried to increase facilities for enjoyment, even for their subjects. He mentions, because this one verse he was speaking in a university in America, he mentions how all these people came to America to try and set up a place for better enjoyment. But they've all gone. They're no longer here. They set up this place for material enjoyment, but they're not here anymore. And we're trying to enjoy now, but we won't be here forever either. He says similarly, people like Napoleon Bonaparte in France, the Kaiser in Germany, even Gandhi in India, they thought they could set up facilities for better enjoyment, but they're no longer here. They're no longer an enjoyer. So the enjoyer is Krishna. The only true enjoyer is Krishna. So linking these two facts about controller and enjoyer, Prabhupada quotes that from the translation of this verse, 529, Bhaktaram yagyatapasam sarva loka maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutamam gyatvam mam shantim richati. So Krishna, Bhaktaram yagyatapasam. So Bhaktaram means the beneficiary or the enjoyer. Yagyatapasam of all sacrifices and austerities. Sarva loka maheshwaram. So he's also the controller of all the planets and the demigods. And then additionally, Suhridam Sarvabhutanam, he's our best well-wishing friend. When we know this, this will bring peace from all material miseries. So, Prabhupada speaks a lot about this age of Kali. How, in general, Krishna has supplied the Vedas to educate the human beings. So many living entities are here, but there is a distinction between human beings and animals. Is that the animals, they don't know they're not the body. But the human beings have the facility to know they're not the body. And Prabhupada is explaining even by some intelligent thoughtfulness, one can determine that. So for human beings, Krishna has provided the Vedas. He has provided great sages who come and try and educate people. But Prabhupada makes the point that in this age of Kali, the world is so degraded that nobody wants to listen anymore. He says, especially he is contrasting in this class he's giving in America, he's contrasting that in India, nobody is wanting to listen to him when he was preaching. But he went to America, and what he found in America is that they've been trying this sense gratification in America for 4 or 5 generations. And he found that the youth in America have tasted the fruits of material life. A lot of these people he found as hippies on the streets, taking drugs and into all sorts of sinful life, came from very successful, very respectable families. So they knew what the fruits of the material life was all about. And they found it distasteful. They didn't want these fruits of material life. They wanted something better. So he said that these people who are not much interested in the fruits of material life are therefore very, very much in the right position to take an interest in Krishna consciousness. So this knowledge comes down and is handed out by great devotees and great sages. And it is our first duty in spiritual life to take part in this knowledge. So Prabhupada here is also discussing knowledge, which is another one of the things that Arjuna had asked about. He says that Bhagavad-Gita is the beginning of spiritual life. We must begin by understanding this basic knowledge. The simple knowledge that we have to learn, Aham Brahmasmi, I am spirit soul. I am qualitatively one with the absolute truth. I am a minute particle of the Supreme. So Krishna created us, we're his energy. We're a minute particle of him. Prabhupada gives two analogies very famously and very frequently. It's like if you take a drop of the seawater, its qualities are exactly the same as the ocean. You can put it under a microscope and you can examine its qualities, and it's exactly the same as the ocean. But in quantity it's not the same. Its potency is not the same. It doesn't have the power of the ocean. And similarly, he talks about the particle of gold in the gold mine. A particle of gold in a gold mine is qualitatively the same, but there is a vast difference in the quantity, in the value we put on it. One little particle of gold we might just mistake and leave it aside. But if we happen to have access to the gold mine, we'd be very excited. So there's a difference between the quantity of us as minute particles and the Supreme Lord. So he gives another nice analogy for kshetra and kshetragya. So kshetra is called the field. So he gives us the analogy of the field. A field has somebody who is the owner of the field, who tills the field. He may not be the actual owner, but he is the farmer. So he is the one who has the proprietorship over the field. So the tiller of the field, he has a choice. He can grow a crop that's extremely valuable, or he can grow a crop that has no value at all. So this is the choice of the person who tills the field. So Prabhupada makes this analogy. It's the same as us in this human form of life. We have this body, but we can choose to grow a valuable crop and follow spiritual knowledge, or we can choose to follow a useless crop and cultivate material knowledge. He describes that the knowledge you learn about technology in universities is being completely material knowledge. It's all about how to try to enjoy the prakriti, the material nature. So basically it's not useful knowledge. Human beings can utilize this body, this field, to advance, to learn. Animals cannot. So he quotes another verse from the Bhagavad-Gita about how the humans can come to this point of devotional service by piety. He quotes 7:28. Yesham tvantagata papam jnananam punyakarmanam te dvandva moham nirmukta bhajante mam jadavrataha. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated and freed from the dualities of delusion, they engage themselves in my service with determination. So this piety that is available in human civilization, that is not available for animals. They act solely according to the modes of nature. But humans have the ability to develop piety. So this can help us. But Prabhupada also makes the point that actually our path is simply by the grace of Krishna and in no other way. We cannot, by our own efforts, become free from the material nature. By Krishna's grace, he will send the great sages to teach us. He will help us to overcome the material nature by giving us knowledge directly. That was in the 10th chapter where Krishna spoke about that. 10:10 Tesham sarata yuktanam bhajatam pratipurvakam tadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. To those constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. Tesham evanukam partam aham agyana jam tamaha nashayam yatma bhavasto jnana deepena bhashvata. To show them special mercy, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So this is coming back again to Krishna personally. The Acharyas have also commented it. Krishna says, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. In the same way that we read in the beginning, the 7th verse of the 12th chapter, Krishna says, I am the swift deliverer. So Krishna's grace is personally there in order for us to get out of this bodily conception of life. So Prabhupada also wants us to fully understand about Krishna. Krishna is not just a Hindu god. Krishna is God. There is only one God. There is not another God for the Christians and another God for the Muslims and another God for the Jews. There is one God. And he doesn't think, I'm just going to look after these people, they're my people. He doesn't even think, I'm just going to look after humans. He is interested in the welfare of all living entities. So, as we've gone through the Bhagavad-Gita, Prabhupada explained in the purport how the first 6 chapters explained about the soul and the path, how we can act as the soul. And the second 6 chapters described about Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So as we come through understanding all of these things, then we can develop the faith in the process that will help us to give up our attachment for trying to enjoy. Okay. So another thing about this last thing about who is to be known. Prabhupada made the point that the object of knowledge, who is the supreme controller, the supreme enjoyer, the absolute truth, he cannot be impersonal. Because if someone is a controller, he cannot be impersonal. To be a controller implies that there is some plan involved, who to control, who not to control. There is some thought pattern, and there is some activity of controlling or not controlling. So Srila Prabhupada said this shows that the impersonal is not the knowable. The knowable is the person, Krishna, the absolute truth. And this knowledge that we take from Krishna is perfect because he doesn't have a material body. So many other varieties of knowledge are available, but they're created by us, and we're subject to 4 defects of making mistakes, of being illusioned, of having imperfect senses, and of cheating others. Okay, so we'll come back to this purport just a little bit to conclude. So Arjuna was inquisitive about Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, Kshetra, the field, Kshetra, its knower. So we've shown how these are related, that Prakriti, nature, is the field, and that Purusha, the enjoyer, is also the knower of the field. We find out later that there's also the 2 knowers. The individual soul knows the field, the body, a little bit, but Krishna perfectly knows all bodies. We're called the knower of the field, but actually we don't know everything about our body. Most of us don't know how food is digested. We know we put it in our mouth and we chew it, and we don't know much else aside from that. Very few people know actually the process of digestion of food. So we're not perfect knowers even of our own body. So this will come up in a few verses' time to distinguish between the 2 knowers of the body. Okay, so knowledge and the object of knowledge. So knowledge is another very interesting thing. We have a full verses 8 to 12. We have a long selection on finding out what is knowledge. Krishna gives us the process of knowledge. Knowledge is not just something simple. Knowledge begins with how we approach it. It begins with humility. It's the first item of knowledge. And the knowable we've talked about. So coming back to the kshetra, the field of activity, Prabhupada makes the point that he tells us in the purport that according to our capacity to enjoy, we're offered a body. So we're offered this body, and this body is our field of activity. But this body defines and limits our activities. And it defines and limits our enjoyment. In a cat's body, a cat has a certain type of enjoyment and a certain type of activities. And in a human body, we have a different type of activity and different type of enjoyment. So according to our activities and our thoughts, we qualify for a certain type of body. And in that type of body, what we can do and how much enjoyment we can get are limited. Prabhupada, of course, can't finish talking about bodies without bringing in the hog, the pig, which has the desire to enjoy eating all sorts of unmentionable things. So it gets that facility, it gets that body, whereby it can. So this is important for understand that this field actually limits our activities. But this is because we attach ourselves to the field. We have become under the control of nature. Prabhupada gives us as another example that we're not the controllers. If we were the controllers, we wouldn't come under the control of the nature. So we come under the control of the nature, but this is through our desire. It is not by Krishna's desire. Krishna made this arrangement in order to purify our desires, but it is not his desire that we come under the control of material nature. He is giving us the process by which we can come out of it. Prabhupada has explained about these sages who come to try and educate us, how the spiritual master comes and how it's up to us to surrender to the spiritual master. So this kshetra limits our enjoyment and our activities, and it also gives us our false designation. I am man, I am woman, I am Hindu, I am dog, I am happy. Even I am happy is a designation. So in the Nectar of Devotion, there's the verse, Sarvopadi Vinirmuktam. In order to come to devotional service, we have to give up all these designations of identifying ourselves with this kshetra, with this body. Okay, so we'll briefly go through this last paragraph in the purport, because Prabhupada is linking through the whole Bhagavad-Gita. He says, in the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad-Gita, the knower of the body, the living entity, and the position by which he can understand the Supreme Lord are described. So we learn the knower of the body, the living entity, as the soul. He is different from the body. And the position by which he can understand the Supreme Lord, we learned about karma yoga and how to engage in the service of Krishna. In the middle 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the relationship between the individual soul and the super soul in regard to devotional service is described. The superior position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the subordinate position of this individual soul are definitely defined in these chapters. So, in the beginning of the 7th chapter, Krishna describes his energies, and he describes clearly how us as the living entities are also one of these energies. 7, 4 and 5. 4. Bhumir apo nalo vayu kam mano buddhir evacha ahankara iti yame bina prakriti astada. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence and false ego. Altogether these 8 constitute my separated material energies. So this is, we're knowing as material nature, which includes how our bodies are made up. Aparayam itastvanyam prakritim vidime param jiva bhutam mahabaho yayedam daryate jagat. Besides these, O mighty armed Arjuna, there is another, superior energy of mine, which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. So Krishna is describing very clearly that the individual living entities are not exactly the same as him. We're the same in quality, we're his part and parcel, we're a superior energy, but we're not the same as him. Etad yonini bhutani sarvanitya pudaraya aham krishnasya jagata prabhava pralayastata. All created beings have their source in these 2 natures. Of all that is material and all that is spiritual in this world, know for certain that I am both the origin or dissolution. So Krishna clearly says in these middle 6 chapters his position as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and also the relationship between us and him. Of course, we have in this middle 6 chapters, in the 10th chapter we have the seed verses of the Bhagavad-Gita, 8 to 11. We just read 2 of them, but the first 2 begin Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. So Krishna is saying, I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So Krishna is quite clearly showing his position as being the origin, being the controller and being the enjoyer. And for us, when we become wise, the living entities, we know this perfectly. We will engage in devotional service and worship Krishna with all our hearts. Matchita matkata prana bodhayanta parasparam katayantas chamam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. So that's the superior position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The subordinate position of the individual soul are definitely defined in these chapters. The living entities are subordinate under all circumstances, but in their forgetfulness they are suffering. When enlightened by pious activities, they approach the Supreme Lord in different capacities, as the distressed, in want of money, inquisitive, and in search of knowledge. That's also described in the 7th chapter. Now, starting in the 13th chapter, how the living entity comes into contact with the material nature, and how he is delivered by the Supreme Lord through the different methods of fruitive activities, cultivation of knowledge, and the discharge of devotional service are explained. Although the living entity is completely different from the material body, he sometimes becomes related. This is also explained. So this is explained very nicely in this chapter. And Krishna gives some very nice analogies. Let's see if we can find it. He talks about, where is this? Here, this one. He talks about the sky. Yata sarvagatam sokshmyad akasham nopalipyate Sarvatra vastito dehe tatatma nopaliptite. The sky, due to its subtle nature, does not mix with anything, although it is all-pervading. Similarly, the soul, situated in Brahman vision, does not mix with the body, although situated in that body. And in the very next verse he gives another analogy to help us understand how the living entity lives in the body. Yata prakashayacheka krishnam lokam imam ravihi kshetram kshetri tata krishnam prakashayati bharata. O son of Bharata, as the sun alone illuminates this universe, so does the living entity within the body illuminate the entire body by consciousness. So Krishna is explaining every way by how we come into this material nature, how we acquire the different senses by which we'll act in this material nature, and how we're confined in it. But then he will also carry on to how we can get out of it. In 35, which is the last verse of this chapter, Kshetra kshetra gaya evam antaram jnana chakshisa bhuta prakriti moksham cha ye vidur yanti teparam. Those with the eyes of knowledge, those who see with the eyes of knowledge the difference between the body and the knower of the body, can also understand the process of liberation from bondage and material nature, attain to the supreme goal. So Krishna is saying that by understanding this knowledge in the 13th chapter, then we can attain liberation and attain the supreme goal, which is devotional service. So a lot of people like to ignore some of these chapters as being a little technical, but if we take the time to understand these terms and how they show us how we're entangled in this material nature and how we can therefore become detached by knowledge. If we see the difference between the sun and the sky, and the sun is not attached, the sun is not controlled by the sky, the sun is illuminating the sky, like as the soul is illuminating the body by consciousness. The soul is not the body. It is not permanently attached to the body. So by going through these chapters, particularly 13 and 14, discover in a little technical terms. But if we can fully understand it, it will help us to become detached and become free from this desire to enjoy and its attachment for enjoyment in the material world. So we'll ask here if anyone has any comments or questions about today's class. Hare Krishna Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Just like Lord is the source of everything. When we have our body and what is going in our body, we do not know. So similarly, Lord has created all different bodies, and each and every body feels hungry. They like to eat. And after eating, they feel satisfied and they feel they have the strength. The process of eating for everyone, Lord has given same. And the process of the food, processing in our body and giving us the strength, and it turns into stool. So this process we do not know. We don't know how it is working. This is the Lord's mercy that He has given us, that how we should eat and how we get the energy and how the food is being processed and digested. So this is the Lord thinking that it is very astonishing to think about this thing, that how this process is going on. We are knowing how it is going to be, like whatever things we eat very nicely. But how the process is, the body is processing, how the strength we are getting, how we feel strong by eating, not only human beings, animals, birds, and everybody, they take the similar amount of food, and this process is going on unknowingly to the person.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite amazing. So, I mean, different people are trying to find out how it works by different means. In Western medical science, they will tell you in an analytical way. But if you study Ayurveda, you'll learn about dhatus, and you'll learn about the different energies and the different airs within the body. It's a completely different way of understanding it. But still, no matter how much we study, we don't know perfectly. Even if we are an Ayurvedic doctor or a Western doctor, we still don't know perfectly what's happening, how it works. And of course, the doctor cannot guarantee the cure because everything is up to Krishna in the long run. Any other comments or questions? There's a microphone just coming. Hare Krishna.
So we preach to some people who don't know about the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. And we try to explain what Prabhupada is saying in the purport, that your body changes from a baby to a young girl, young boy, and then to a teenager, and then to adult. But so you see your body completely different, but you are the same person inside the body. But people sometimes understand it, sometimes they say, yes, it is the evolution, it is always new. They don't really, that's the point of philosophy of Prabhupada, that there is something that is the person, the living person inside the body. They still identify with each change as being themselves. It was me as a baby, it was me like that.
Yeah. I mean, according to our level of attachment, we will not want to listen. Actually, in trying to persuade somebody to change their opinion, the actual truth doesn't have much to do with it. Because how a person receives what you're telling them has more to do about how they perceive you than actually what you're saying. Because our ability, I mean, we have our own preconceptions. We're defined by our preconceptions. We don't always quickly listen to others either. When we come here and sit in the Bhagavatam class, and Prabhupada is emphasized in the Bhagavatam, at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, how we need this submissive attitude. We need to actually accept that the person sitting on the Vyasasana in the position of Vyasadeva is handing down some knowledge that's important. We know here from studying this that this knowledge is perfect because it comes from Krishna. But it takes us faith to come to that. Burijan explains nicely, he wrote a book called Art of Teaching, which is about teaching in the Gurukul, but it applies to teaching on any level. He says that in order to teach somebody has to accept you as being an authority, and at least in one area. They have to think that you have something to teach them. And he said that until they come to that point, you can't teach them anything. Like he's talking about running a Gurukul, so he says, yes, you set some basic guidelines, you do this, you don't do that. But he's not learning when he's just following these rules. He's only learning when he accepts you as a teacher. So he says if someone doesn't accept you as a teacher, you can simply be their friend and hope that they will come to realize that you do have something important to share with them. And yes, Krishna also says there are some people who are not ready to hear what we're trying to teach. And in some cases we can approach them and tell them in a different way. And in some cases they're simply not ready to hear us. I'm sure you have more experience than me on that.
Second chapter of Bhagavad-Gita, the Acharya.
Yeah, the amazing verse, yeah.
They explain that those who even after hearing about the soul still cannot see the existence of the soul.
Yeah. So we try our best to present, we try our best to understand who we're talking to and present it in a way that they will accept it, understand it. But if they're not ready, they're not ready. We have to also accept that. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai.